Picture yourself walking into a small-town radio station sometime in the early 1950s, maybe in Winchester, Virginia, or another corner of the American South. The place smells of old vinyl, cigarette smoke, and metallic microphone stands. Through the glass window of the booth, you see a young woman behind the mic looking a bit nervous but electric, with talent. She's about to sing a country tune that will send shivers down your spine, yet she's still an unknown, just a local performer entertaining a handful of listeners. Little does anyone know that in just a few short years, this very singer, one Virginia Patterson Hensley, soon to be known to the world as Patsy Cline, will redefine how country music sounds and where it's played, bridging the gap between country's raw heartbreak and pop's polished flair. Born on September 8, 1932, in Winchester, Virginia, Patsy Cline came from a working-class background that shaped her grit and determination. She was actually named Virginia Patterson Hensley, but that soon changed when she discovered that the stage needed a name as vibrant as her voice. Growing up, life wasn't easy. Her father eventually abandoned the family, leaving young Virginia to pick up the pieces and help support her mother, Hilda, and the rest of the household. She dropped out of school at 16 to work a variety of jobs, sometimes laborious or menial, but always overshadowed by the desire to sing. This was a girl who had been performing in church choirs, local fairs, and anywhere else they'd let her, near a microphone since she was a child. She had, by her teens, even managed to land some spots on local radio broadcasts. There was an early sign that she was a natural entertainer, someone who could take the everyday struggles of life and funnel them into song with uncanny emotion. Singing in local clubs around Virginia was her first foray into performing professionally. And while these smoky bars and beer-soaked floors were worlds away from the glamour of national television, Patsy's ambition was already taking root. She changed her name to Patsy, borrowing from her middle name Patterson, and eventually appended the last name of her first husband, Gerald Cline, although she'd soon divorce him and move on to her second marriage. Regardless, her new stage name, Patsy Cline, fit the strong, no-nonsense energy she projected on stage. At first, though, industry executives didn't line up around the block to sign her. The 1950s country music scene was crowded with big voices and big personalities. Yet there was something about Patsy, that powerful contralto, that genuine heartbreak in her tone, which set her apart. It just took a while for record labels to notice. Patsy's first real break came when she signed with a small label called 4-Star Records in 1954. She was in her early 20s, determined but still rough around the edges. That initial contract was less than ideal. 4-Star had her tied up, paying her meager royalties and forcing her to record songs she didn't particularly like. Her first single, A Church, a Courtroom, and Then Goodbye, flopped in 1955. It barely made a ripple in the music scene, yet even this early track carried the seeds of who Patsy was, a voice that carried heartbreak with clarity, as though she had lived through every lyric. Unfortunately, the public and radio stations just weren't biting, but you can't keep a talent like Patsy Cline's hidden forever. In 1957, she performed a song called Walkin' After Midnight on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts, a widely watched television show that sometimes propelled unknowns into the spotlight. She wore a cowgirl outfit that reflected her small-town roots and country style. But when she began to sing, she didn't just sing country. She had a kind of torchy swing that made her equally at home in a pop setting. Walkin' After Midnight soared to number 1, 2 on the country charts, but more importantly, it also hit number 1, 12 on the pop charts. This was a revelation. Suddenly, the shy local singer from Virginia was a crossover star, bridging worlds that had often been kept separate. People who never listened to country music a day in their lives started calling radio stations, asking, "Who is this Patsy Cline, and where can I hear more?" Despite this breakthrough, Patsy still struggled with four-star records and the limitations they imposed. But good fortune found her in 1960 when she signed with Decca Records, where producer Owen Bradley offered a more modern, lush, and pop-infused approach to country music. Bradley became her champion, crafting background arrangements that used strings and backing vocals reminiscent of pop ballads rather than the raw twang of honky-tonk. This shift didn't just suit Patsy's voice, it elevated it. Suddenly, she wasn't just a country singer, she was an all-around vocalist, capable of riveting performances, whether the track was pure country heartbreak or a smooth pop standard. It wasn't long before she scored the first number. One country hit of her career, "I Fall to Pieces" in 1961. That record also landed in the top 20 of the pop charts, confirming that "Walkin' After Midnight" hadn't been a fluke. Listeners were captivated by her voice, a rich velvety sound that could slide effortlessly between a gentle purr and a powerhouse belt. This was the era of great crooners and torch singers, but few had the raw sincerity Patsy possessed. When she sang about heartache, you believed every syllable. Next up was "Crazy," written by a then unknown songwriter named Willie Nelson. "Crazy" was initially difficult for Patsy to record. She was recovering from a brutal car accident at the time, and the torchy style of the composition was outside her comfort zone. But once she got it down, it became her signature tune, reaching number 1. 2 on the country charts and number 9 on the pop charts. The story goes that Willie Nelson had pitched the song to other singers, but none could capture its essence until Patsy stepped in. Her take on "Crazy" drips with longing, regret, and a kind of intimate conversation with heartbreak itself. Even today, it's often cited as one of the greatest country recordings of all time, thanks not just to Willie's writing, but Patsy's interpretive power. Patsy's star kept rising. "She's Got You," released in 1962, soared to number 1, 2 on the country charts, cementing her place as one of the leading voices in crossover country pop. That same year, she became a member of the Grand Ole Opry, a milestone that any aspiring country artist dreams of. At the Opry, she rubbed elbows with legends like Minnie Pearl, Ernest Tubb, and Hank Snow. Yet even in that illustrious company, she stood out. Audiences embraced her not just as a singer, but also as a tough, independent woman who spoke her mind and had the pipes to back it all up. Even so, behind the curtains, life was complicated. Patsy had married Gerald Cline back in 1953 when she was only 21. He wasn't supportive of her career, believing a wife's place was in the home, not on stage or touring. Their marriage crumbled. By 1957, that relationship was done, clearing the way for Patsy to marry Charles "Charlie" Dick shortly thereafter. Charlie was more supportive of her aspirations, but he also struggled with jealousy and had a drinking problem that sometimes led to fights. Their relationship was punctuated by both loving support — he was known to champion her behind the scenes — and stormy conflicts that left bruises on her emotional life. They had 2 children, Julie, born 1958, and Randy, born 1961, which brought Patsy immense joy, but also added the pressures of motherhood to her already demanding schedule. She juggled radio appearances, live tours, recording sessions, and family life, all while dealing with the male-dominated music industry of the time. Patsy's personal challenges were not confined to her marriages. In 1961, she was in a terrifying car accident in Nashville, a head-on collision that threw her through the windshield. She sustained a broken wrist, a dislocated hip, and a severe facial cut that required stitches. Doctors thought she might never be the same, both physically and vocally, but Patsy, with the resilience that had carried her through childhood hardships, fought back. Even while she was recovering on crutches, bandaged and in pain, she was eager to get back in the studio. Legend has it that soon after the accident, she recorded Crazy, delivering a performance that sounded as if no physical trauma had ever happened. That near-death experience might have made some artists timid, but Patsy marched forward. Her brush with mortality in that crash wasn't her only time flirting with danger. She'd faced health scares from a young age, including a bout of rheumatic fever at 13 that nearly stopped her heart. The illness left her with lingering cardiac issues, and she would later credit that childhood battle for deepening her voice. Perhaps her trademark contralto took root in those painful days of convalescence, when all she could do was hum quietly to pass the time. Friends said she never let these health issues define her. Instead, she channeled her experiences into an unwavering dedication to her craft, forging a voice that could communicate life's raw hardships and sweet triumphs in a single breath. Though she had achieved enormous success by 1962, from Grand Ole Opry membership to major crossover hits, Patsy felt an odd sense of foreboding in her last year of life. Some of her close friends, including Loretta Lynn, later recalled that Patsy had begun talking about the possibility of dying young. She even wrote out a will on the back of a plane ticket not long before the fatal plane crash, confessing to people around her that she just had a feeling her time might be near. Part of this might have been the cumulative effect of her near-death experiences and that gnawing sense of fragility that artists often feel when they pour themselves so wholly into their craft. But no one really expected that this unstoppable force of a woman would be gone by the age of 30. On March 5, 1963, Patsy performed in Kansas City at a benefit show for disc jockey Cactus Jack Call, who had died in a car crash. The show, intended to help Call's family, was typical of Patsy's generous spirit. She was always willing to lend her talents to a friend in need, even if it meant traveling. After wrapping up the performance, she was eager to get back home to Nashville. She boarded a small Piper Comanche plane piloted by Randy Hughes, who was also her manager. The passengers included fellow country stars Hawkshaw Hawkins and Cowboy Copas. That day the weather was bad, stormy, with low visibility, and warnings were in place for small aircraft. Some recommended they wait out the weather, but they decided to take off anyway. Near Camden, Tennessee, just 90 miles from Nashville, the plane crashed, killing everyone on board instantly. The news broke like a shockwave through country music and the broader entertainment world. Here was a vocalist at the apex of her career, a mother of 2 young children, a woman with an unquenchable thirst for life, and in an instant, she was gone. The tragedy drew parallels to Buddy Holly's plane crash a few years earlier in 1959, reminding fans that talent and youth offer no guarantees. Overnight, Patsy Cline became a legend, the stories of her grit and generosity echoing through every country music hall, every bar where Crazy might be playing on the jukebox. She was laid to rest in Shenandoah Memorial Park in Winchester, Virginia, where her grave remains a pilgrimage spot for devoted fans. To this day, visitors leave flowers, notes, and tears, some having traveled hundreds of miles just to pay their respects. But Patsy's story didn't end in 1963. Her music took on a life of its own. Posthumous releases like Sweet Dreams and Faded Love shot into the top 10 of the country charts, haunting the airwaves with the knowledge that the singer behind them was no longer with us. Her final recording session had taken place in February 1963, just weeks before her death. Tracks that showcased her vocal maturity and the rich undertones that made her so beloved. Owen Bradley continued to champion her work from beyond the grave, ensuring her recordings were treated with respect. One of those releases was an album called Showcase, Originally out in 1961, but recharted after Patsy's death. Then, in 1967, an album simply titled Greatest Hits found its way to the public, eventually going on to sell more than 10 million copies and achieving diamond certification. That record alone introduced a new generation of listeners to her unique style and became a staple in countless households. The industry also honored her in a big way. 10 years after her death, Patsy Cline was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1973, the first solo female artist ever to earn that distinction. This accolade, normally reserved for those with long, extensive careers, underscored how massive her impact had been in a shockingly short time frame. She'd recorded for only 8 years, 3 studio albums total, and still managed to change the face of country music forever. Some artists spend decades trying to achieve what she did in just over half a decade of mainstream visibility. Her personal life, of course, remained a subject of fascination. Charlie Dick outlived her by many years, always speaking fondly of the woman he loved. He admitted his own failings, jealousy and drinking, but also pointed out that Patsy was never one to hold back or shrink from confrontation. If she felt strongly about something, she'd let you know. This trait showed up in her negotiations with record labels too. Early in her career, that 4-star contract had stifled her financially and creatively. But once she moved to Decca, she showed no hesitation in pushing back against any arrangement or song choice she felt limited her artistry. She was among the first female country stars to demand equal pay for her performances, to get her own dressing room, and to pick her own material. In a largely male-run industry, that was revolutionary. The stories of her speaking her mind, using colorful language, and standing up for fellow female artists became legendary. She mentored rising talents like Loretta Lynn and Dottie West, often providing them with clothing, money, or advice, even when she wasn't rolling in riches herself. Patsy didn't have the diva's chest of gold that some might imagine. She lived modestly, taking care of her mother, Hilda, who had sewn many of her early stage costumes. That tension between star power and humble roots was part of Patsy's charm. In interviews and on stage, she came across as feisty and brash, a woman who could knock back a beer with the boys and still outsing them any day of the week. She called people hoss, wore Western-style outfits that mixed kitsch with glamour, and told the audience exactly how she felt. Yet with her children, she was nurturing and protective, worried about the future they'd face in a world where she was constantly touring and being recognized by strangers. All these layers add up to a portrait of a multifaceted human being. Fame never seemed to completely separate her from the simple girl who once sang in small clubs around Winchester. Beyond the personal stories and relationships, one must consider the seismic shift Patsy catalyzed in the music world. Before her, female country singers often stuck to a fairly narrow formula: twangy, up-tempo tunes with lyrics about heartbreak that skewed more hillbilly. Patsy, guided by Owen Bradley's production, fused country with a lush pop aesthetic, introducing sophisticated orchestrations and background choruses that wouldn't have been out of place in Hollywood musicals or big city nightclubs. This style made it easier for mainstream, read pop, audiences to embrace a country voice without feeling like they were venturing too far into rural territory. Patsy bridged that gap, paving the way for future crossover giants like Linda Ronstadt, Dolly Parton, Shania Twain, and Carrie Underwood. They all owe a debt to her for showing the industry that a strong female singer could stand with one foot in country traditions and another in pop's broader horizons, without losing authenticity. Despite the glossy production, there was never a doubt that Patsy was country to her core. The heartbreak, the survival stories, The recollection of tough times, these were not affectations. They sprang from personal experience, from a childhood shaped by financial hardships and a father's absence, from a string of near-death experiences, and from the daily grind of forging her path in a man's industry. The combination of classic country sorrow and sophisticated pop styling was new, and it quickly became a blueprint for cross-genre success. Even now, if you flip your radio dial or check out streaming playlists, you'll find her songs weaving in and out of modern sets, a testament to their timeless appeal. In 1985, the film Sweet Dreams, starring Jessica Lange as Patsy Cline, brought her story to the big screen, introducing yet another generation to the singer's life and hits. While the film took some creative liberties, it underscored the public's enduring fascination with Patsy's mystique. People saw her as a kind of mythic figure, a woman of immense talent snatched away too soon, leaving behind only those unforgettable vocals captured on tape. Even younger fans, born decades after her death, discover her through this film or through tributes by contemporary artists. They find the raw emotion of Crazy, the poignant surrender in I Fall to Pieces, or the sassy confidence in some of her lesser-known recordings, and they fall in love with that voice all over again. Since her passing, the world has continued to commemorate Patsy in ways big and small. Museums include exhibits featuring her outfits, letters, and personal artifacts. Artists from Reba McEntire to K.D. Lang speak of her influence, and you can still see covers of Crazy performed in talent competitions worldwide. Critics note that her voice possessed an unusual combination of warmth and controlled vibrato that made even the simplest melody sound intimate and urgent. Moreover, her gift wasn't just technical. It was emotional sincerity that hit listeners straight in the heart. When she sang about heartbreak, you believed her. When she offered an upbeat tune, you could feel her grin shining through the speakers. Her finances, had she lived, might have become more secure once she fully escaped the clutches of her early 4-star contract and settled into a fairer deal with Decca. It's bittersweet to note that she never truly reaped the financial rewards of her blossoming fame. She died at the moment her star was at its zenith. Yet in the decades following, the sales of her posthumous albums, greatest hits, compilations, and re-releases have been colossal. That greatest hits album from 1967 in particular reached diamond status by 1990, an unheard-of achievement for many country artists, let alone one whose original discography was so short. In that sense, Patsy ironically became a larger commercial success after her death than she was in her lifetime, a testament to how deep her impact ran and how word of her talent continued to spread. What is it about Patsy Cline that resonates so powerfully, even as of March 17, 2025, more than 6 decades after her plane crashed in the Tennessee woods? Part of it is the universal story, the rags to riches arc, the tumultuous personal life, the quiet heroes and storms that shaped her into the star she became. Another part is her musical legacy. Only 3 studio albums, 12 charted country hits, including 3 that soared to number 1. One, but an outsized influence on how country and pop could intersect. Then there's the intangible. She had presence, a kind of magnetic authenticity that leaps out of every old television clip or scratchy radio broadcast. She made you feel something, whether it was sorrow for a lost love or the exhilaration of a romantic chase. You didn't just listen to Patsy, you connected with her. And that's really at the core of her ongoing appeal. People connect. They hear her voice and sense the real woman behind it, the survivor of rheumatic fever who still carried the faint echo of it in her deeper register. The mother worried about providing for her children while she soared on the charts. The outspoken performer who once told a heckler in the audience exactly where he could put his misguided remarks. She was, in short, a star who never forgot her sense of self or the daily struggles that shaped her identity. By combining that authenticity with a sweeping new approach to country pop, she left a permanent mark on American music. If you ever get the chance to visit her gravesite at Shenandoah Memorial Park in Winchester, you'll see a steady flow of fans stopping by with flowers, notes, or just a quiet moment of reflection. There's something poignant in that pilgrimage because it reminds us of how short her life was, just 30 years, cut off at the apex of stardom. Yet in those 3 decades, she not only climbed onto the national stage, but also managed to change the course of country music. She opened doors for female artists to assert themselves creatively and financially. She proved that a country singer could take pop charts by storm without losing the soul of her roots. She gave courage to younger performers who wanted to experiment with style and production. And she did it all while wearing a smile until the day the music was tragically silenced. Much has been written about her philanthropic nature, like performing at benefits, including the very one in Kansas City right before her death, or giving away stage outfits to struggling fellow musicians who couldn't afford them. Stories abound of her pulling younger singers aside to impart wisdom or to slip them a bit of cash if they needed it for rent. In a cutthroat business environment, that generosity set her apart as more than just another ambitious star. She had heart, the same heart that pulsed through her stirring ballads and heartfelt love songs. Her influence is also felt in the way the industry handles cross-genre marketing today. In the modern music market, it's not unusual to see a country artist's album debut at number one on the pop charts, or to hear a pop singer experimenting with country-inflected tracks. Patsy was doing that in the early 1960s, guided by Owen Bradley's layered, sweeping production, bridging those markets when the cultural gap between them was far wider than it is now. At the time, some hardcore country fans even criticized her for selling out or drifting too close to mainstream pop. But looking back, it's clear she was simply ahead of her time. She recognized that good music transcends genre labels, and her voice resonated with fans who couldn't have cared less about whether a steel guitar was featured or not. You see hints of her in the artistry of Linda Ronstadt, who recognized the power of blending country with rock and pop to create a broad appeal. You see it in Reba McEntire, who has a similarly powerful vocal range and an ear for drama. Dolly Parton, with her refusal to be pigeonholed, carries a bit of Patsy's spirit. Modern country pop superstars, whether it's Carrie Underwood or Casey Musgraves, live in a world that Patsy helped build, a world where it's permissible, even celebrated, to fuse multiple musical styles. And all of them at some point have likely cited Patsy as an influence, or performed her songs, aware that she set a standard for emotional delivery that few can match. The tension in her own personality, this brash, boisterous entertainer with a heart of gold, makes for a narrative that's impossible to put down. She was a puzzle of complexities, loving and generous, yet fiercely protective of her interests, polite in interviews, yet unafraid to curse someone out if they disrespected her, refined enough for the pop crowd, but country to the bone in her mannerisms and worldview. Every facet of her persona seemed so genuine that fans felt like they knew her, even if they'd only seen her on television or listened through the radio. That sense of intimacy with an artist is the mark of someone who truly transcends celebrity and becomes iconic. Her songs still feel fresh today, maybe because heartbreak and longing don't have an expiration date. The language or instrumentation might sound vintage, but the emotions remain relatable. Many listeners discover her in times of personal struggle. Perhaps they're going through a breakup or facing some tough transition, and they're stunned by how relevant her lyrics and voice are. Patsy's music offers a blend of comfort and commiseration, something that can't be replaced by modern pop hooks or production tricks. At home, she was still Ginny to her mother, or mom to her children. She might have had sold-out shows and top 10 singles, but she also worried about everyday issues, finances, her kids' futures, and the strain of a rocky marriage. It's been said that she never let stardom get to her head. She stayed in touch with her roots, frequently returning to Winchester and maintaining relationships with family and old friends. Had she lived longer, who knows how her career and personal life would have evolved. She might have headlined bigger venues, collaborated with more pop stars, maybe even ventured into television or film. The 1960s were a culturally transformative time. She could have become an even more significant force in bridging the tastes of Middle America and mainstream pop culture. Yet what remains is a robust discography, limited but packed with quality and a towering legacy. For fans, the best way to experience Patsy Cline is to dive headfirst into her music, put on Crazy, close your eyes, and imagine her in that Decca studio, perhaps still a bit bruised from her accident, but pouring out every ounce of feeling into the microphone. Listen to I Fall to Pieces and let the layered production wrap around you, while her voice carries both regret and resolve in equal measure. Cue up She's Got You, to hear the ache that only heartbreak can bring, told so plainly that it pierces your own memories of loss. Or maybe sample her lesser-played tracks, those hidden gems that reveal her playful side, her comedic timing, or her willingness to push boundaries. Some fans venture to her home turf, touring Winchester to soak up the environment that shaped her early life. There's the radio station, where she first sang on the air, the small clubs where she honed her stage presence. You might even encounter locals who remember family tales about that Hensley girl who sang like a nightingale. They'll tell you how the community took pride in her success, how they saw her face on TV and felt that one of their own had made it big. Even now, generations removed, she's a local hero, a testament to what raw talent and persistence can achieve. When you step back and view Patsy's story in total, her early struggles, the near-starvation level poverty, the dashed hopes of her initial record contract, the sudden burst of fame that Walkin' After Midnight delivered, the multiple near-death experiences, the unstoppable work ethic, the heartaches of marriage and family, and finally, the plane crash that ended it all too soon, you realize it reads almost like a novel. The big difference is that it's all real, which makes her triumphs and her tragedies resonate on a deeper level. Maybe that's why she's been such a muse for filmmakers, biographers, and fellow musicians. Hers is a story that can't be pinned to one era or one musical style. It transcends them. Today, her presence is felt in the streaming era as well. Young fans stumble across her music on playlists designed to showcase the best of country classics or timeless ballads, and they find themselves clicking the replay button again and again. Songs recorded decades before their birth suddenly capture what they're feeling in a way no modern track can. That's how you know an artist has left a permanent stamp on the cultural consciousness. Patsy is not a dusty relic of the past. She's a living, breathing presence in the hearts of anyone who hears her sing and feels that tug of raw emotion. As of March 17th, 2025, over 60 years after that fateful plane crash, Patsy Cline remains a name that can anchor entire radio shows or tribute concerts. She's an icon for female empowerment within country music, reminding aspiring women artists that you don't have to compromise your voice or your artistic vision to make it big. She's also an emblem of authenticity in a musical landscape that can sometimes feel overly produced or disconnected from genuine human emotion. Patsy was never disconnected. Every note she sang carried the weight of real-life experience, whether it was heartbreak, happiness, or the simple day-to-day grind of survival. When fans think of her, they often conjure the image of a woman in a classic Western outfit, fringe and boots, hair perfectly styled, belting out a tune that could just as easily belong on the pop charts. In that sense, she was a pioneer, someone who dared to mix styles and break old rules because she followed her gut and her ear. Her passing at age 30 left the world wondering what might have been. Would she have collaborated with Elvis Presley, or dabbled in the folk revival of the mid-60s, or even been part of the cosmic shift that took country toward more rock-influenced paths in the 70s? Would she have become a grand matriarch of country music, nurturing young talent for decades? The truth is, we can only guess. What we do know is that the songs she left behind continue to enthrall us, generation after generation. Her life was short, but it was full of achievements, battles, heartbreaks, and unwavering talent. She survived poverty, paternal abandonment, serious illness, a devastating car crash, only to be taken by the cruelty of a plane crash at the height of her stardom. And yet in those brief 30 years, she did enough to change the sound of country music forever, bridging cultural and genre divides like few before or since. So the next time you hear her crooning through your speakers, maybe you'll pause and think about the story behind that voice. The hard-scrabbled childhood in Winchester, the rejections and heartbreaks, the unstoppable dream of singing her truth, the grit that got her through near-fatal accidents, and the generosity she showed to fellow performers in need. All of that is present in every phrase she ever recorded. That's why Patsy Cline remains a legend. And that's why, all these decades later, her legacy hasn't faded. It's only grown stronger with time, reminding us that a truly great voice, coupled with boundless heart, can withstand anything, even the abrupt end of its physical presence. Patsy may be gone, but she's still right here, living in every note, every loving tribute, and every tear that falls when Crazy plays late at night for someone nursing a broken heart. Her story and her music stand as living proof that real talent can never truly be silenced.